Hey, today's guest, Momma Kai, is running for mayor of Raleigh, North Carolina on a write-in ticket. So it's going to take something close to a miracle to get it to happen, but it's such a compelling story. Momma Kai has been on the podcast twice. I met her when I was an instructor for the Food Revolution Network's plant-based coach certification program, and Momma Kai was taking the course. And we got to know each other, and we were sort of neighbors in North Carolina before I moved to Spain. And she is an unhoused woman. She has a young child, and when we just spoke, she had been living in her car. They had been living in their car for 15 out of the last 19 months. And Mama Kai is also an advocate for the unhoused and has been involved in the Raleigh City's Commission on Housing and has become very frustrated with how the system is working. And she decided to change it. And as she said, she got a sort of a knowing. She wants nothing to do with politics. It's kind of dirty business, not her thing. She's into policy and justice and spiritual healing, and that seemed very different from actually running a campaign. But what came to her, and you'll hear her talk about this, was that Raleigh needed not a mayor, but a matriarch, someone who was going to look to the future, look to what her son's life was going to be like, and what she could do now to bring that about. So I hope you listen, even if you're not in Raleigh, even if you are not anywhere near North Carolina and don't have any interest in this particular election. Homelessness, unhousedness, social economic injustice is a huge blight on the world. And Mama Kai is really, really thoughtful and heartful and passionate about coming up with solutions. And I think she's a leader that we need to be paying attention to. So without further ado, hey, Momma Kai Sanders, welcome back to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thank you. It's another amazing day in paradise.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I love seeing that is the sort of your tagline in all your emails, and it always reminds me and centers me on wonder and gratitude. So I thank you for beating that drum.
Thank you. I think it's important. That's a mindset choice.
Yeah, and then, so another mindset choice is that when you look around and you see things not as the way you would want them, to do something about it, and that's what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, give us the excuse me. I've got a bit of a cold still. It's lingering on. So we may have some coughs that don't get edited out. Uh,
Hey, this
but
is real life
I'll
we're dealing with, right?
it's real life. It's real life with a mute button. So as soon as I ask the question, I can shut myself up and let you talk. So so for folks who haven't watched your previous episodes or aren't familiar with you and your work, can you maybe just introduce yourself? And I'm gonna turn myself on mute. So if I start talking again and you hear nothing, it's because I've forgotten to turn mute off. So I'm
I'm
I'm,
here for
I'm
you.
putting
I'm here for
I'm
you.
putting everything. You're gonna do a lot of work today.
And this is perfect because it's authentic, right? The authentic live recording. I would love to introduce myself. Thank you so much for this opportunity once again. It was a little bit more than a year ago when we spoke, or we did an interview, and we originally met through the Food Revolution Network plant-based coaching certification. And I was talking about how being an unhoused individual, me and my young black male superhero, who will pop in every once in a while because he does like to be recognized. The name that God gave him when I was pregnant is Wisdom, and he is my heart beating outside of me. We've been living in our car for about, I would say, 15 of the last 19 months or so, something like that. And I talked about how I had served on the homelessness task. Actually, at that point, I was serving on the homelessness task force, and the task force was dismantled here in Raleigh, North Carolina, just to be specific. And the task force was dismantled without any solutions being implemented, even though I brought some to the table. But one of the solutions that I had mentioned was homesteads for the homeless, which was bringing off-grid tiny homes into the city limits, and that means they would have compost toilets, rain catchment systems, solar panels, so they would operate independent of the infrastructure, but and be small enough and inexpensive enough that we could actually house people, grow food in personal gardens and in community gardens, and get people in housing.
Okay. And so that the task force was disbanded,
It was
and
only for a certain amount of time, and after 8 meetings over a 9-month period, and that's because we didn't meet in December. Um, they just they didn't have any desire to do anything with any of the suggestions that had been given. The one I shouldn't say that, because there was one thing that they did do. They put some funding towards helping the continuum of care become more stable. And everywhere in America, there's a certain um, area that's considered a continuum of care. And for us, it's the county. And so Raleigh is part of Wake County, and so the county is part of is one continuum of care. Basically, that means that's kind of where the funding goes to, that comes from the federal government to specifically to help address homelessness. And so our COC, our continuum of care, was really on shaky ground, and there's been some work put into helping to stabilize that. But other than that, any other solutions that were brought to the table were not fully explored or even implemented.
so what does stabilizing the COC mean for unhoused individuals?
It really doesn't mean it. What it means more for the sake of government than it is doing any that than it is providing any immediate benefit for anyone who's unhoused. The COC is a bunch of organizations throughout our county that have, it's like they have a membership, and basically they come together on a regular basis to kind of report what they're doing and things of that nature. But for the everyday unhoused person, it doesn't do anything. It
So
literally
it's
is it literally is just a funnel for funds to come in through the for information about what the federal government is doing, like the kind of funding they're offering, will bring. That's really what it's used for. But for a lot of that funding, it's very, very specific. And a lot of it does not have to do with housing. It has more to do with services. And so those organizations can learn how they can apply for those different funding opportunities. They're called NOFOs, is which stands for Notification of Funding Opportunity. And so organizations can find out what kind of funding they can apply for, but how that relates to eliminating homelessness directly, it really actually doesn't do much from my perspective. There are people who are in more executive positions that will say, yeah, this is important because they need that money that's coming through to run different programs. But from a person who's unhoused, it doesn't have any immediate or direct or effect that is timely.
right. So so it sounds more like some after the fact treatment, maybe band-aid, maybe something significant, but far away from treating the root of the problem or preventing it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha.
It's like executive level of addressing homelessness versus actually meeting the need of getting people housed. And they very rarely come in contact with each other.
So I'm imagining that for you, taking the time to serve on the council was a significant sacrifice of time, that that you've got a lot of other things going on. Um, I'm imagining that it was frustrating to not have that all that investment of your life energy pay off.
Yeah, well, it was 2 hours a month, every month, and I would meet with other people who basically had membership in this COC, this continuum of care, different leaders from different sectors of the community. And there were a couple of things that were frustrating about it because I was sitting there at a morning time meeting that was from 10 to 12, and everybody else in that room was being paid. And one of the best practices is when you're inviting that comes down from the federal government is that when you're that it's important to invite people with lived experience into to sit at the table and provide their input. That's one thing, but it's also important to compensate them. And so
Hmm.
even though I asked for compensation, there was none to be given. I received compensation at the end through a third party because at the for our last couple of meetings, they actually brought in a mediator. And when he found out I wasn't getting paid, they actually paid me. And they actually compensated me for my work for the two meetings that they had been there, but
Hmm.
that they had no recognition of any of the work that I had done for the previous six meetings. And I was one of only two people that actually attended all of the meetings. The other thing was I was given the opportunity to present an idea. It came down from the mayor to present to this task force, and when I gave them an idea that was kind of the initiating idea for creating homesteads, and they completely ignored what I said. I never got any feedback on it. I was rushed through it. Nobody got to ask any questions about it. And I have the recording. And I was told by one of the members of city council, who's one of the co-chairs for this task force, that they would get back to me, and nobody ever did. So it was
Hmm.
really frustrating because I initially had asked to present it to city council, and the mayor kicked it to the task force, and nothing ever came of it through the task force.
Hmm. Did you get any feedback on why was it that no one was interested in any solutions, or was it that yours were sort of weird and wacky and far out and composting toilets and people couldn't wrap their heads around something you know hippie-ish?
The only feedback that I got was from the other co-chair of the who was a commissioner on the wake on the for the county. The so our it was supposed to be a joint task force that was run by the city council, and there was a city council representative and there was a Wake County representative. And from the person who was the Wake County representative, the only kind of feedback that I got was that I need to wait for a request for proposal to come out. It's an RFP where when there's an official request from either the city or a county for an idea, then you can submit a proposal. But which means that she was never notified that the mayor sent me there during a public city council meeting, and that the city councilor who was over agreed to allow me that space. And so there was absolutely no communication between the two people that were in charge that I was supposed to be there, and that this wasn't something that just came up that out of the blue.
Uh-huh. So last time we talked, you kind of introduced me to the idea, and I think I'm getting this right. So correct me if I'm misremembering, of like a homelessness industry, right? Like there is a system that's in place that's pretty resilient, that if homelessness went away, it would go away too. And it's people's, it's bureaucracies, it's companies, it's money flows, um, right? So there's a lot of people with a vested interest, at least bottom line, in maintaining the problem. And as long as you maintain the problem, then funds can come in and COCs can disperse those funds, and new initiatives can arise to creatively use them. But it's all skirting around the issue, the main thing, which is to eradicate homelessness.
Yep, that's it. It's really interesting because in the last year, the city has actually hired a new housing and neighborhoods director. And thankfully, which is she runs the whole housing and neighborhoods department. And thankfully, she has been committed and is often quoted as saying homelessness is a solvable problem. Homelessness is a housing affordability problem. That is what the
Mm.
problem is. It's not the people, it's the system. But she is confined within the city, to work within those limits that are there. But she even admits that it's a community, a problem that needs community in order to solve it. And part of that problem is that there are so many people whose livelihoods depend on their jobs that are in this industry of addressing homelessness without actually eliminating it.
Hmm. Right. It reminds me a lot of, the way, the context in which we met around, chronic disease and environmental degradation. Like, what are we going to do? Because, eating better and farming better is off the table because no one's going to do that. So, maybe we can cure cancer or do molecular treatments or, shoot tubes into the sky to suck up carbon, right? And anything other than this, addressing the solvable problem.
Right. By just going upstream, looking at what caused the problem and addressing that problem instead of feeling like we have to reinvent the wheel and making it
Right.
square, thinking that it's going to work.
Yeah. Is part of the issue um, a kind of a moral stance around, like, we, from the time I was very little, going to school, getting graded, being told, this is where you are in the hierarchy, and the better you do in school, the more money you'll make, the more successful you'll be. Um, is part of it that homelessness as well? It's like musical chairs. Someone's going to be the slowest. Someone is going to not pull themselves up by their bootstrap. And, you know, if we got rid of the penalties, then why would anyone do anything?
There are so many heresies around why homelessness exists. And I was just contemplating this because I had an experience just last week where I was talking with some people and they were like, "But you sound so intelligent or you seem so smart." And I realized that I had heard that a lot. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, being homelessness or living in my car doesn't mean I'm stupid. It's like, that's not like the first check. Oh, you're homeless. You get, like one of the gentlemen that I met, he's an older gentleman, had just a really unfortunate situation where he was living in the house had lived in for 15 years. And there was a new landlord and there was a problem with the roommate. I think the roommate was doing a lot of complaining. He had started doing some things that the neighbor didn't appreciate. He was like tag sailing in front of the house, and she was like very protective of, her property, which was right next door. And so the new landlord came to him and said, "I'm sorry, things aren't working out. You have to leave." Now, the room that he's in has not been occupied. He's not renting out the space to anybody else. And so there's this older man who's now living on the street because the transition from a place you've lived for 15 years, what you did to get that place 15 years ago is totally different to what you can get and afford now, you know? And so that was one instance. The other instance is a woman who has been out of work for over a year. She has applied and interviewed and couldn't even get a job at Harris Teeter, being one of like 15 applicants just to be a cashier. And she eventually had to just give up her apartment or risk, her credit being further marred because she couldn't keep up with her rent that was increasing for a one bedroom. And so
Mm-hmm.
she now is without housing, you know? And so it is very interesting. I say those things as examples of the fact that housing affordability is what the key um, reasoning behind homelessness. And this was actually based on a book that was written by, it was co-authored by one of the authors. His name is Greg Colburn. He's out of I think it's the University of Washington in Seattle, but he came and he spoke at our Affordable Housing Summit. And he said that across the board, a lot of people want to say mental illness and addiction, like those are the causes for homelessness, and those things have to be addressed first. And what he found out is that in places like Chicago, where there's higher addiction rates but low homelessness, was because Chicago has more affordable housing units. Where in other places that might not be the case, that across the board, the one thing that was consistent about homelessness was the cost of housing. And so regardless of what the situations are, people are not able to afford, and especially with Raleigh's rent becoming exponentially more expensive with the amount of growth that we've experienced in the last 5 to 10 years, it has just become harder and harder to find property that people can afford to live in that aligns with how much they make. Bless you, bud.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense because if you think about people who are mentally ill or have addictions, they're getting enough oxygen, right? They're if the stock is sufficient, then things like that don't get in the way. I think what maybe one of the issues is that for people who see you just going about your business, assume you're not homeless, and so there's a confirmation bias around the people who are obviously looking homeless. Tend to be people who are sort of sitting and may have addictions or act in a ways that people are scared of or feel erratic. And so if you have the wrong base rate, you're going to solve the wrong problem.
Right. And the challenge with that is that the longer people are homeless, chronically homeless, the more likely they are to develop mental health issues, the more likely they are to have addictions, to deal with being unhoused. And so those things don't go away because people are unhoused, they are usually exacerbated. And it's really challenging to speak on what somebody would do inside their home, because we know that we have functional addicts, functional alcoholics that live at home and hold down jobs. And because you can't see what their traumas are, they're not being lived out, for on display for the world. It really is unfair to people who are experiencing those challenges. And my situation is really special because I learned about brain development, nervous system regulation, trauma, and nutrition in the midst of our experience. So I've been able to navigate our experience so much better than others. And that has been the key to our success, I will say, with being unhoused, is that because I know that I need to regulate my nervous system, I know that I need to co-regulate with my little guy, I know that nutrition is a huge aspect of behavior and attitudes and different things of that nature. um we navigate this experience a lot better than the status quo.
Mm. Right. And I hear that how important that is for you. And I also hear that there's a danger of, okay, like let's teach the homeless self-regulation as the solution.
Right.
Right. Like I'm remembering, I read about during the Vietnam War, something like 15 to 20% of U.S. soldiers were estimated to have become addicted to heroin. And as the war wound down, the president and other leaders were like, what's going to happen to society when all these people come home with military training? You know, they knew they hadn't been treated very
Mhm.
well. They weren't, you know, coming home as, you know, conquering heroes, or no, there was no gratitude. But what are we going to
Right.
do with all these? And according to the studies I read, about 7% of the addicts continued to be addicted, and the other 93% stopped. And it wasn't because they had a change of heart. It wasn't because they saw Jesus. It was because they were removed from the situation that in which taking heroin was better than any other option.
Yep. There's actually this channel, this YouTube channel called Invisible People, bless you. And there are two communities. One is in Minnesota and one is in Finland, where they have actively been working to eliminate homelessness. And they use the housing first methodology, something like that.
Yeah.
But which comes from the United States. It's really funny because in the video, for when they're talking to the people in Finland, they're like, one of the one of the questions was like, what do you say when people suggest that housing somebody, you know, is first is not the solution? And he, in his very strong accent, he's like, we use housing first. It comes from America, you know, it comes from the USA, you know. It's like this is a practice that was initiated, you know, from the federal government of the United States of America. So why are we having a hard time understanding that this is what works best? And there is more than enough evidence to prove that it does, you know? And it's really unfortunate that we're missing out on doing that and initiating that and recognizing, figuring out how to do that so that people can get housing. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run as a writing candidate for mayor so that I can be on the forefront of addressing that issue that nobody else is touching.
All right, so let's get to the punchline of this conversation. You're Madam Future Madam Mayor in the world in which I want to live. Um, what? Tell us about that. What do you have to do to become a write-in candidate? I mean, I guess you don't have to do anything. You just have to tell people to write your name, right?
That's part of it. So here in Raleigh, I don't know how they do it in other places, so I can't speak to how it's otherwise done. But here in Raleigh, they have a certain period of time where you register and you pay for your name to be on the ballot. In order for you to register, you have to have a treasurer, you have to set up a bank account, and that allows you to, you have to go through a training. Your treasurer has to go through a training, and that basically sets up your committee that
Okay.
says, I'm going to run for mayor. And that puts your name on the ballot so people don't have to write it in.
Okay.
So, and at that point, you can fundraise. And there's certain stipulations about how you can fundraise, how much money you can receive, who can pay, what you have to write down, and all this other stuff. What kind of information you have to collect from your donors and things of that nature. And so I really struggled with that. I actually had two people that volunteered to be treasurers. They both bailed on me. Their life circumstances just didn't allow them to continue. And finally, it was getting down to less than 4 weeks to the election. And I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. I've taken the training. And there's this particular stipulation that says that you can use your own funds, and there's another stipulation that says that you can check this box, and that says that you're going to use less than $1,000 for your campaign. And I said, well, I'll just do both of those, you know,
Hmm.
because recently we've had a lot of devastation in Western North Carolina with Hurricane Helene coming through and
Yeah.
essentially eliminating entire neighborhoods, destroying a huge portion of our the infrastructure in our highway system that will be closed until 2025 of next year, you know? And so that was one thing, but knowing that I struggle, there's no way that I could conceivably ask people for money knowing that there were people that needed this money more than I did to put up a sign or to get a t-shirt or to give away postcards or something that I had printed that will eventually go in the trash, you know? And I wanted to take a more organic approach. And so I've been out in the community, not promoting that I'm mayor, but just to see what the need is, what the
Hmm.
genuine need of people is, you know? And I also missed out on, a lot of candidates forums and stuff. I went to two. And when I went to those two, I realized how little people understood the process of government, and that our candidates really, they don't have a lot of time to actually explain what happens or why we don't do this or why we don't do that. People are just expecting things, and they're expecting it to be paid for without realizing that that money is coming out of their pockets. So if you want a service from the government is going to get the money from you.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't just grow on trees. And I was like, that was really eye opening for me, that there was no space to explain these things, um, or to go back and address like root cause. We've had a lot of just icky things that are happening here that are based on people being unregulated. I say one of my taglines, besides write my name, is leading as a mom, a matriarch, and a mayor with compassion and neuroscience, because both of those words denote that there's a need and that there's going to be some sort of effort to address the need. But if you're doing neuroscience, you stop looking at whatever's being presented in front of you and try to go a little bit deeper to find out what the actual need is, to see if that it really is, if the government is really the need, the place that the need can be met. And so it's just been really, really a fascinating experience to see things from this mentality of, if I'm going to lead, what would I do and how would I do it differently, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. So, have you gotten any press? Because I'm imagining, like, I'm already watching the movie in my mind. Like, you know, I think, in the first, there's definitely like a 2 or 3 part, arc to their sequels. The first one, you don't win, but you come real close, and like, you know, there's hugging at the end, and people empowered and motivated to move forward, and it's such a great story. It feels like there's something about your genuineness and clarity that could go viral. And I'm wondering, has anything like that started happening?
Not yet. And I take responsibility for that because I have been slow to put my platform out there. We're actually in a period of early voting, and there's two things that I recognized: that I'm not there to convince the people who already know who they're going to vote for. We have, in the last election, I think the numbers come out to, there were approximately 150,000 people who voted in our municipal level election. Just calculating the numbers from the votes that came in for during our last election, there are almost 500,000 people in Raleigh. So there's this huge number of people who have no desire to vote, aren't voting, or whatever, for whatever reason, you know? And I feel like my message is to them. And so one way to do that is I have been recording some videos, because videos are easier to utilize to get information out. So videos, and encouraging people to increase the playback speed just in case I'm talking too slow for them. To also use closed caption. And also, I'm going to start speaking to the youth. That was something that I realized, even though I have ideas for the youth, I haven't had any feedback about that. And so, right
Hmm.
around the time that school gets out for our high schoolers, I really want to just set up on a corner somewhere close to where, we have people walking and things of that nature, and say, hey, can I just have grab your attention and see what you think about these ideas? Because the reality is, if you get things into the hands of our young people, the way they are connected to technology, that will make you go viral, you know.
Mm.
But it's also because the reason why I'm running isn't for me, it's for wisdom. Like, I think the greatest thing that I've learned in the last couple of years since the last election, when I really had this thought, like God put in my head that Raleigh did not need a new mayor, it needed a matriarch. And I was like, not me. You know, I abhorred politics. I just thought it was awful. But in the last 2 years, just all the experience I've had, all the people I've talked to and stuff like that, recognizing the problems that we're facing today and hearing that the problems we're facing today weren't have nothing to do with the council, had very little to do with the council that's in office now, but the one that was 2 councils ago, 3 councils ago, 4 councils ago, who didn't think that developers should put in sidewalks, or who didn't think of the infrastructure and the potential growth of the city, you know? And so I'm like, well, if when I win, that means that the decisions that I make in office are going to more likely affect wisdom than any other demographic. It's not going to affect me the most, you know,
Uh-huh.
it's going to affect wisdom and his quality of life and others in his generation, you know. And so without really having that voice of the youth, then I haven't really felt confident moving forward. That was one of the things that I realized recently, is that I really need to make sure that the direction I'm walking in is the direction that they want, you know, not just of my own intelligence, but with that actual feedback. And I don't think there's any other candidate that's looking at it this way.
Hmm. Well, it doesn't seem like it's a very, you know, election savvy process to think about 20, 30, 40 years from now. Appealing to voters who haven't been born yet or are too young to vote. It's almost like you're offering a healthy meal, but damn junk food tastes a lot better.
Yeah. But
Right.
again, and what's interesting is this is kind of like a full circle moment. You know, before we started, I was talking about how had been flipping through your Instagram page, and that's when I came upon this excerpt from an interview you did that talked about becoming a beloved ancestor. And I went back and I searched out that interview that you did, and then the TEDx talk that you referenced in it. And with Carolyn Raffensperger, I believe it is.
Yep. Yep.
And so, like, when I heard that like resonated so deeply within me, especially her TEDx talk, where she goes more deeply into why she came up with that, because of the water that is, you know, contaminated for, you know, 120 something generations or something, you know, and how there's a certain demographic of our Native American communities where they have this seventh generation concept, where we're looking at things of or how they're going to affect the seventh generation from them, you know. And I was like, that's what we need to be looking at, not the here and now, not whether you know policy or you know how to change a law or a, you know, a text change or a ordinance or zoning or anything else like that. It's what is your vision for the future? And what does it look like? Do we still want to have elections where people are talking down to each other? Do we still want to have elections where you never know who the mayor or your city councilor is, that they can ride the bus or go in the store and nobody acknowledges them because they don't know what position they have, you know? Or where there's this absolute power and one person gets to stand and mute everyone or take away their time to be able to speak and and use their authority in a really yucky way, you know, like we should be able to change that. We should have these visions of changing that, not always being willing to conform. It really has to be this idea of thinking outside of the box of what's handed us, that instead we can open up the box and it's like a jack in a box, you know, it's bigger than what's inside is bigger than what's in the box, you know. And so that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to open that box and let everything spring out and see what we want to do differently, you know.
So what kind of reception have you gotten? I don't know, you've gone to a couple of candidate forums. Do you go door to door? Do you talk to people, as they're coming in and out of Whole Foods? Like what does it
I
look like to watch you as a candidate?
people don't know yet, and to a great extent. And for the people who have like said something to at these two forums, it hasn't been any like big revelation. Nobody's come running up to talk to me except for one person. And they asked me, they wanted to talk to me, but they had a ride that was leaving. And I said, well, can I just give you my phone number? And so I gave them my phone number, and they're like, you're giving me your phone number? And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, if you want to talk to me, that's the best way to do it. And
Hmm.
so she actually gave me a call, and we had this beautiful conversation, and she shared with me, about how she wants her lifestyle to be, and it was interesting because there was some synchronicity there about, being outside and being able to enjoy healthy food, and, and things of that nature. And she was like, she's like, I was gonna go vote today, and I didn't, but I didn't want to do it until I talked to you. So that's why I called. And she's like, I'm gonna vote for you, and I feel like it's gonna be that way the more I get information out. And I'll admit I've been slow to do it, but I've been very intentional. Like my
Uh-huh.
research isn't done. Even though election day is not very far away, I feel like my research isn't done. But there's going to be, once what I do and how I think is gets out there, I think it will just generate a life of its own. It's going to be like yeast, to dough. It's just going to kind of, and the longer it settles, the more people will hear it, and it's going to explode. And I think it's going to take people by surprise because they're not expecting me. Um, but I've been planning. I've been
Uh-huh.
dreaming and scheming. I've seen my swearing in ceremony, and who's going to be there, and I have those visions just similar to you. It's going to be amazing.
Um, so let's see. How many days or weeks till election day now? So how many days or weeks till election day from today? 2 weeks from today. Gotcha. So what are your plans for the 2 weeks?
Up to I'm gonna have some recordings that I'm gonna upload, and then I'm gonna go and set up, and I'm gonna talk to some youth and get their opinions, get their thoughts about what they want to see for the future, and go from there.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna be out in the community. Me and Wisdom go to parks, and I'm just gonna take the opportunity. I have a few things that I printed off to just say, if you're interested in change, please write my name. And
Uh-huh.
what's interesting is I did submit Mama Kai as on my application, so they have that there, so that if people write Mama Kai as opposed to my given name, which is Cara Lynn Sanders, then whichever name they use, then it will still count towards my vote.
Oh, sweet.
Hmm.
Um, what does Wisdom think?
Wisdom, what do you think about me running? You went like this.
Thumbs up.
Do
Okay.
you want to come talk about it a little bit?
What, are you running?
Yeah, what do you think about me running for mayor?
I think it's good.
Yeah. Any particular reason why?
No, not really.
Yeah.
You get to be there.
I get to be mayor, and you get to be the mayor's child.
I'm like the co-mayor.
The co-mayor.
Co-mayor.
That could be cool. That could be cool.
Like the co-host, or the
Yeah.
co-manager, the co.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You get to share
You'd
in
be the
that. You get to share in the stardom.
you're the regent until the prince comes of age, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, when I was pregnant with him, I knew it was that he was coming to change the world. And it started with me. And so I do see him, hosting, these youth gatherings and, and bringing people together and just to have fun because I think there's so many youth that they're so bogged down with homework and sports and things that a lot of times youth don't have that space for just fun, that families don't just have a space for that fun. We see it. And so we are becoming more intentional. So I see, bless you, that that he will lead that families, spending more time together, having fun intentionally.
Hmm. Yeah. Cool. So I have one more question. I think it might not be a nice one,
Okay.
but I think there are folks who will be curious about it.
Hmm.
Which is like, so we talked earlier about people are surprised at how articulate you are and how thoughtful and how well educated and well rounded about neuroscience and things that most people haven't heard of. And I'm imagining there are people who are going to be thinking like, why doesn't Mama Kai like take care of herself first? Like just go get a job. You certainly could earn $100,000, $200,000 a year with your knowledge and skill set. Like why not set that foundation first?
That is this. Oh, it's such a great question. I appreciate it. And the best way that I can answer it is based on the definition of compassion. And the compassion by definition it's a two-part, it has like a two-part definition. The first part basically says that you express empathy towards somebody who is suffering. But then the second part, and this is from dictionary.com, says something to the effect of that empathy is coupled with a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. And from what I've seen, there are people that don't have that they can empathize with the suffering, but don't have that strong desire to alleviate it, or else it would have been alleviated already. It's not that difficult. And so if I can bring more awareness to this and use my platform, being intelligent, articulate, educated, and unhoused, if I can use that platform to bring awareness to the brilliance of all people in the unhoused community, regardless of what their brilliance is, then I've done the work that will get the masses housed as opposed to just myself. I could go away and I could hide in a shell and I could be a turtle, but that's not, I was created to be more like the sunshine, more like
Mm.
that Hollywood spotlight with, the Batman signal. Instead of the Batman signal, it's the Mama Kai signal, like if I can use my platform for greater good, then that's what my heart desires more than anything else. And I know that
Mm.
everything will fall into place from there.
Yeah. So, so what's your request or invitation to the people who are listening to this who are comfortably housed, who may not feel like they're turtling per se, but maybe feeling like, yeah, I'm taking care of my own. I'm not fully invested in this or any issue in particular. I maybe people are like, you know what, I'm just getting by. I'm on this side of homelessness, and I'm one medical diagnosis away from the other side. What's your invitation to those folks? And I include myself among them. Like I'm comfortable, and it's easy for me to focus on me and mine.
Yeah. I think that is such an important question. And my call to action would be to be authentic. Like, that's what I can invite people to do more than anything. And if that means that you are that turtle and you're in your shell, then be that turtle in your shell until you're comfortable to peek your head out. You know,
Hmm.
if that means you're like me, you're the spotlight, then be that spotlight. and do it without apology, but coupled with compassion. Like you can't be out there and, in people's faces and, and being harsh and vulgar and vile. Um, I would suggest that being authentic is the call to action. And if your heart is yearning to get involved with something, then do some research and get involved. Put your energy, manage your energy in a way that serves you and whatever community that you feel compassion towards. Um, I think we overextend ourselves a lot of times. And even I found myself in that position and have had to scale back. And like right now on the mirror, it says, I asked Wisdom a question yesterday, what do you want to do today? Because I realize I'm taking him here and there and everywhere. And to be Momma Kai, it means that I have my priorities in alignment, but it doesn't
Mhm.
always mean that I get 100% right, you know? And so it takes some scaling back, it takes some realigning, it takes some imagination. And we spent time doing some things that he wanted to do that were fun, you know? And so it's important to me that people recognize for themselves what being authentic means, and doing that without apology, doing it with compassion in a way that manages their energy in a healthy way. So because we need people, but we need people who are healthy and who are mindful and who can be committed. I always say committed, compassionate, and a little bit crazy, as in Steve Jobs crazy. And
Mhm.
there's a quote that he says, and it ends with, people who are crazy enough to believe they can change the world are the ones who do. And I call myself that kind of crazy. And so, but I would not want somebody who is only partly committed because they have other commitments that are more heavy. Like the lady that I had the opportunity to speak with who called me, she has a passion for some of the same things that I have, but she's dealing with some things personally that she can't get involved. And I totally respect that her heart is in it, that her energy is towards wanting solutions, genuine solutions, but her time has to be committed elsewhere. And so I totally respect and appreciate that she recognizes her boundaries and she's committing her time where it needs most importantly is needed. And so
That's
that would be my call
uh,
to action. Be authentic.
that's so lovely. It's so generous. So for folks, I'm you're about 3 weeks out in the queue, but I'm going to throw this up on Thursday or Friday just so we can take advantage of the 2 weeks before the actual election. Is there anything
Cool.
that folks can do to help you get elected if they live in Raleigh or North Carolina or anywhere in the world?
Yeah, I'm actually putting out I've started a blog. It's called Write My Name on Blogspot. And so if people want to just check that out and share it to their social media,
So
that's
that's
probably the place.
so
Write my
that's
name.
writemyname.blogspot.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to put that link in the show notes. And the
Okay,
show will be plantyourself.com/606.
cool.
Okay, so write my name blogspot.com. And anything if for my Raleigh friends?
Vote for me. Write my name. Um,
Okay, then
be
talk
committed
about it.
to, yeah, talk about it, share my information. Be committed. Don't think about what you want. Like, we really need to think about what we want for the future of the city and for the future of elections. What should they look like? Because the places I've been, I know I haven't seen the majority of the candidates. We have like 30 people across all the districts, and like we have someone running unopposed in District D, but we have like 7 people running for District C. We have, I think, 6 people running for mayor, something like that. And across the board from District A to E, at large, and mayor, there's over 30 candidates. And as many places as I've been in the community, I haven't seen them. Some city hosted events, some community events, some intercultural events. I'm not seeing them, you know, and when I would expect to. And I think that if you want people to work for you, they have to know you, you know? And so it's important for me to just to have those conversations with people without this idea that, oh, I'm running for mayor, so I'm talking to you because I want you to vote for me. I want it to be authentic. And when I do step out there, I want it to be like, oh, I've seen her before. Oh, I've seen her before. I've seen her somewhere, you know?
Mm.
And to be committed to, I know I've seen her, I know I've heard her, I know she's been here, I know she's been there, you know. So I'm excited about that. I think I have enough connections that might get me some numbers. And even if I don't win, which I'm not counting on, because you have to think big, I want to use that
Sure.
influence to make positive change. You know, whatever influence, whatever I am able to ascend to, I want to use that power to bring positive change that's needed on a community level versus a government level. So I got plans.
All right. I hear him. I'm so honored to be your media outlet today to share your energy and your vision with the world. Why not? Why
Thank you.
not?
Absolutely.
So so
Thank you for that.
let's say once more. Write my name. That's WRITE. I assume. Write my
Hmm.
name dot blogspot.com.
Yep.
Momma Kai, Kai, or Carolyn, Karalynn Sanders.
Hmm.
If you're in Raleigh and you're eligible to vote, and let's just keep this movement going. When you know, the future generations may one day thank us.
Yeah. And call us that beloved ancestor. That's what I want to be.
Right on, right on. Momma Kai, thank you so much for all you're doing, for taking the time today. And Wisdom, thank you for your contributions, both on and off the camera.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and continued success. Love what you're doing. Appreciate you so much. I continue
Oh,
to learn.
thanks.
I love the one particularly just real quick. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
Ah,
People are gonna have to catch you on Instagram to find out about that one then.
right on. I got to jump for another call, but it's great talking to you again. And
You
we'll catch
too.
up again soon.
Sounds good. Continued success.
And that's a wrap. You can find the show notes for today's episode at plantyourself.com/606. Not a ton to report in movement news. I think I'm getting my stamina back after this, whatever non-COVID head and chest cold that's been going on for a while. Did some work today, started on the stairs, running up and down the stairs. Nasty beach workout that involved a combination of bear crawls, push-ups, jump squats and sprints, and ended up with some boxing. And I actually got some video. So if I can figure out how to get it from my phone onto the internet, maybe I'll post a little bit of that in the show notes as well. And if you're wondering why I filmed it at slow motion, it's actually not. That's actually how fast I hit right now. So hopefully I'll get to work on the speed a little bit. That's about it for me for right now. Looking forward to some excellent conversations coming up in the next couple of weeks. Hey, quick favor, if you like the show, tell one person about it. So think of somebody who you think would enjoy this episode or any of the episodes. You can check out the entire catalog. I just moved to another podcast host, and I've been cleaning things up and putting in episodes that had been somehow dropped or missing. You can find the entire catalog from episode number 1 to today's, which is 606, at plantyourself.com/PYP, all lowercase, PYP standing for Plant Yourself Podcast. All right, that's it for this week. As always, be well, my friends.